What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Pazza podcast. Back this week after a couple weeks off from the end of the season. It's now that time of I guess you wouldn't say season, but it's that time of the year, the summer mercato, where there's a bunch of stuff floating in orbit. And we, as fans, have to try and make sense of it all, what reports are legit, what's actually going to happen. And it used to be a time when, living in the States, it was probably different if you're European, Italian especially. But living in the States, it was a time where, you would have to go on a website where everything was in Italian. And this is 15, 20 years ago. Hopefully you could copy and paste into Google Translate and it gave you some sort of mumbo jumbo and you'd have to decipher. But the reporting wasn't as crazy and frequent as it is now. You'd have to wake up and sometimes you'd refresh the page and there wouldn't be any new news. Whereas now it's every 20 minutes you refresh a page and it's in English and you get a whole bunch of different things. So what we're going to try to do this summer is try and, talk about the stuff that logically makes sense based off the reports and that has been reported by multiple sources and assure, you and try and calm people down on a bunch of the fluff. I won't speak on a bunch of the fluff. And, sometimes fluff comes to fruition, but a lot of times it doesn't. It's just journalists trying to get a click. So we will start this episode with something that, 9 times out of 10, and maybe nowadays 8 times out of 10, when you see a here we go from Fabrizio Romano, that usually is an indication and has been historically that, something is happening. And we got one yesterday, not coming in to Inter, but someone leaving Inter. And that is our right wing back, our Dutch campione, Denzel Dumfries. Reportedly, Real Madrid has triggered his release clause to bring him to Madrid, and that release clause for 20 million. And it pretty much all seems that certain that Denzel is going to be a Real Madrid player next season. And just some thoughts about Denzel as a player and what he's done for Inter before we talk about, what this means. He came in replacing maybe since Maicon the best right back, right-sided player we've had in Achraf Hakimi. And he came in, I remember, I think it must have been Euro or maybe the World Cup 2021. No, because I think it must have been the Euro 2020. His performances with the Netherlands then seemed like he was a good player. And then, World Cup 2021, as an Inter player, I remember being in America for the States and the performance he put against, maybe I'm remembering this wrong. I don't even know if we qualified for the World Cup in 2021. My mind is everywhere right now thinking about all this Inter stuff, but he put in a performance against the States for the Netherlands that I want to say he got a goal and 2 assists or 2 goals and assists. It was a man of the match performance, and I had a lot of people at the office I worked at that point coming up to me and be like, man, this guy for Netherlands, he's a freaking tank, and kind of being happy, being like, yeah, he's an Inter player. But when we brought him in, he was linked with us and I believe Southampton from the English Premier League. Not a big boy, not anything like that. And so us battling with them for reported, I think 12, 15 million wasn't much fanfare, especially when you're replacing the likes of an Achraf Hakimi, generational player, 2 Champions Leagues now with PSG, one Scudetto with us. He is one of those players that should and will be talked about, especially, what he did with Morocco making World Cup semifinal. But Denzel Dumfries coming in, he had big shoes to fill, and for the first season or two, he kind of struggled. Everybody knows he's not a technical player. He relies a lot on his athleticism, and I don't think Inzaghi at the beginning understood how to use Denzel Dumfries, and so that led to a lot of seeing Matty Darms and other players filling in that role, and Dumfries coming in as a backup or getting games against weaker opponents. But he grew into this role under Inzaghi, and that was something Inzaghi learned, and it made Dumfries kind of play as a pseudo striker come wingback role, whereas a lot of the times on that back post, that's who DiMarco was looking for. And you would see a lot of times Dumfries lining up when the ball's on the left side as like the far striker alongside Lautaro, a Dzeko, or a Lukaku, or a Thuram. You'd have that third player up there, and it would be Dumfries on the right side. And that's really where he began to shine later on in Inzaghi's career, when Inzaghi really learned how to use him. And then, we got legendary performances, the Barcelona tie last year. And then this season, the game against Como where we were down 2-1, he came and scored two goals, one off of a set piece header, and then one Akanji headed back down to him and he scored. And he scored in spurts a lot of times, and he was just a handful. And I think the one thing a lot of people remember is just how good of a servant he was to the club. That PSG loss, there's videos of him being really the only Inter player coming out and consoling the fans and giving a clap and apologizing for the performance. And he was always a professional. He never really created. It depends on how you look on his injury situation this year. I know a lot of people think he did it on purpose, but even with the contracts and stuff, negotiating lower fee for release clause so he could leave, he did it the right way. And Denzel is someone who will always remember, always love, always support. I did it on 5 other guys last week, and I think we can do it with Denzel as well. He is a true gentleman of Inter. And thank you for your time, Denzel. And it's tough to see you leave. It's tough, but I think we're going to have to get used to seeing players that we've loved and have grown with over the past few years start to leave. So again, thank you. And thank you for everything you did for Inter. Again, true gentleman of Inter. He's leaving for reported 20 million. That's his release clause. And, it sucks. 20 million is, especially when we talk about, other things here in a little bit, the rate seems a little low, but for a player about to turn 30, it makes sense. It makes sense for all parties involved. Real Madrid want to get somebody to replace an even older Dani Carvajal to push Trent Alexander-Arnold. Dumfries could be that guy. He's ready-made. Mourinho already knows how to play with a big physical right back. And it makes sense for Inter. It's time. He's 30. He's getting older, when that physicality and whatnot leaves him. Where do you have a player that's not that technical? So it makes sense. 20 million does suck, but at least we got money out of it. So I think all parties involved, it is a pretty logical and smart move from everybody. So that brings us to our next talking point, which would be the replacement now for Denzel Dumfries to Real Madrid. And again, these are all just rumors, speculation, but these are the ones that are getting the most talked about and the most people reporting on it. So it makes it feel like it's actually legit. And that is Marco Palestra, the Atalanta player who spent this season at Cagliari on loan, kind of a breakout season. And he is kind of, from what the reports are saying, is who staff management want as the replacement for Denzel Dumfries. And it's a different kind of player. I'm going to be honest with you. I didn't watch a lot of Cagliari games. I'm just kind of going off what I've read and stuff. He's a young Italian, which we've had success with for the most part. I mean, Davide Fratesi being the exception. But he's a young Italian. There's hype around him. He is fast, pacey. He can dribble. and it seems to click all the boxes. But what doesn't click all the boxes is his price tag, in my opinion. Reportedly, and this is an Atalanta, we know how they are, but reportedly, they are holding out for 50 plus million. Rumors that it could go up to 55, even 60 for Atalanta to accept. And at this point, my thoughts on it is that's just absolutely absurd. 50 plus million for a 21-year-old right wing back, not a striker, not a winger, not a midfielder, a right wing back. It seems absurd. He's only chipped in one goal in 47 total appearances in Serie A, and you're wanting to pay 50 plus million. That seems ludicrous, in my opinion. I think at that point, it's just smart to stop and go after someone else, because the longer this drags on, more targets are going to fall or move and not be available. And we've seen how that happened last year with Lookman, how we drug our feet and missed out on some other targets. So in my opinion, I think we should not go for Marco Palestra. This is going to drag out, and might as well just let Newcastle, whoever, spend 60 million on a player who has one season really of consistent top flight football, and let them do the gamble for that much. We can't afford to gamble 50 plus million on a player with one season of experience. And I know it seems from all reports that this guy's legit, but I've heard the same thing about Davide Santon, Marco Motta, if you remember when he moved to Juventus way back when, Ignacio Abate, all these Italian outside backs, right wing backs that have come through over the last 15, 20 years and faltered. So in my opinion, 50 million, you can use that money to do something else, plug and play a couple other different pieces. And Inter can't afford to take a gamble on a 50 plus million player. And another thing, I think too, it's, there's no correlation maybe or whatever, but there has been, you can see over the seasons, a trend of young Italian players tearing their ACL. Scamacca, Zaniolo twice, Chiesa, Leone, just to name a few. What if we spend 50 plus million on a player like this? And when you see these younger players come back from this ACL, they're never the same. Scalvini from Atalanta. So I think 50 plus million is just it's not a smart thing, and I think we will move on, because there's no point in getting into a bidding war with an EPL team. So I think we should go and move for some other players. Who? Not exactly sure. A lot of people I see are saying there's not a lot of right wing back options. I think that's false. I think a lot of people are just enamored at the fact that this kid's Italian, he's young. But I think there's plenty of options. And I think we could find somebody for a better deal that can be just as adequate as Palestra. And if he goes to the Premier League, I mean, the physicality and how much more big and bulky a lot of these players, athletic, are. I don't want the kid to fail by any means, because a good Palestra is good for Italian national team. But, that's something to take into account too. On Champions League nights, are we wanting to see Palestra go 1v1 with Kvaratskhelia against PSG? Like, it's just a lot to consider when we're talking about this. And 50 million, that's just too big of a price tag for us as Inter to waste or to gamble. So I would rather us go at someone who's more of a sure thing and put that money towards that. Nico Paz. What else do we have? Just the last, maybe a little thing, just speculation. This Dumfries thing gets me thinking. I think it won't be the last one. And I think we will see someone, maybe multiple other departures that are going to be tough to see leave. I think Hakan, with him being 32, which I did not realize until today. I thought he was 29 going on 30. He's 32 going on 33. Roundabouts the same age as Marcelo Brozovic was when we got rid of him. Reports are like 15 million is all this Turkish Gala or Fender could afford. What did Marcelo Brozovic leave for Saudi? Like 15. I think it's realistic, and I think it could happen that Hakan Çalhanoğlu leaves. And if it happens, again, it's a player that I would hate to see leave. He's given us so many special memories, but I was doing the math, and if we start a midfield with Hakan, Zielinski, and Mkhitaryan, who by all means is coming back, our average age in that midfield is 34 and a third years old. You look at PSG, two times Champions League winners. They have Fabian Ruiz, who is 30. No other midfielder is above 26 or 27 in that PSG squad. You just can't go into a season with this many 31, 32 plus year old midfielders in modern football. It's just not realistic. And to lose Chala on a free next summer as well is just something Suning can't afford to do. Or sorry, it's something Oak Tree can't afford to do. And it's, we can't do it. We lost Skriniar that 1 year on a free to PSG. When the Mercato before January, or the summer Mercato before, reports were 60 million, 50 million, whatever. That realistically maybe set us back a Mercato or two, losing Skriniar the way we did. We can't afford to do that. So Çalhanoğlu might be a person that's on his way out. And I see a lot of people, especially when this Mkhitaryan thing came out, we need the experience in midfield. Again, I'll resort you back to PSG. You can look at Bayern. You can look at Arsenal. Maybe one player over 30 in these midfields. Atletico, I think Saul is the only one. No, sorry, Koke. Saul moved to Flamingo. Shout out to Flamingo. Got a bunch of different jerseys I'm going to be wearing during these summer ones. It's not going to be just Inter, so be on the lookout. 2 years ago, Flamingo, Gerson on the back, former Roma player, if you remember him. But getting back to what I'm saying, these last four of the Champions League final maybe have one 30-plus-year-old player, Kimmich for Bayern, 30-plus-year-old player in the midfield. In modern football, you just can't. We can't afford to have three. If it's Zielinski that leaves, that's fine. But I think thinking logically, Oak Tree, Çalhanoğlu, 1 year left, cash in on him if you can. 10, 15 million. You just got to. It only makes sense. And I see a lot of people, experience, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, we don't need that because if you look, like I said, the 4 years. But then you're discounting Nicolo Barella. We already got Mkhitaryan coming back. Zielinski. Sucic already has a year under his belt at Inter. Stankovic, he's got Champions League football experience. Like this experience debate and keep mentioning, I mean, that's what's holding Serie A and Italian football back. So go ahead and get that out of your mind. Like these guys will get experience playing. You got Lautaro in the dressing room. You got Bastoni in the dressing room. There's your experience, Di Marco. These guys will learn. Like Çalhanoğlu, yes, I love Çalhanoğlu, but if he leaves, there's been games. One of our most successful, if not our most successful stretches of the season, midway into January through February, when we really pulled away in the Serie A. Çalhanoğlu was not playing. He was injured. It was Zielinski filling in for him. So, yes, Çalhanoğlu is very important, but we can live without Çalhanoğlu, is what I'm trying to say. And to get money for it, I think it's important. And another one I think is very interesting, and that's Marcus Thuram. I think he's the type of player that when he's on, he's on. When he's not, he's not. And we have now 2 to 3 seasons of eye test and experience to know what Marcus Thuram is. And it's only when he's motivated that he performs. And when he performs, he puts up huge numbers. But what about the 7 to 8 months where he is a ghost in the middle of the season? We get a month at the beginning of insane Thuram and then a month at the end. What about those extra 8 months in between? Right now, he is a sell high player, in my opinion. He's 29, and Lautaro has success with Icardi, Lukaku, Dzeko, Thuram. So you have players that and experience like Lautaro, and you have proof that he can work with any striker. So why not get rid of Thuram and bring someone else in? Sell him high, 60, 65 million, especially if he goes into the World Cup and has a 3 goal, 1 assist, 3 goals, 2 assists, steps in adequately for Dembele occasionally, all that stuff. Sell him high because his value is only going to go lower. So that's my thoughts on Thuram. We can't afford to just let some guy decide when he wants to play. The reports whenever he first started, getting his form back towards the end of the season was because Deschamps told him that he better step it up to make the France squad. So the fact that playing for Inter and gunning for Champions League and Scudetto and all that wasn't motivation enough. Like, I just don't want a player in the squad who can't get motivated for Inter. It took, hey, your France squad place is under attack potentially for him to finally get motivated. I don't like that. So for me, those are just my thoughts. Not saying these are going to happen. I'm just saying Interisti, get used to it potentially. We're going to see a lot of reports. And like I said, I haven't seen anything on this. This is just kind of speculation based off, Dumfries leaving and what we have. Don't be surprised if Çalhanoğlu, Thuram, players like this, especially with Mkhitaryan signing back, if stuff like this happens. So before we sign off, again, don't listen to a lot of the reports. Look for a lot of consistencies. We're going to see a whole bunch of stuff. Don't get freaked out over the reports. And again, if Dumfries is leaving and Palestra doesn't happen if he goes to the Premier League, trust Beppe Marotta. He has a proven track record. We got to keep trusting this guy. I know a lot of times we get upset, especially last summer, the summer before, blah, 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 blah. We got to trust Pepe. And even if I get out of line and start calling him out, people comment below, let me know. But we got to trust him. And I trust Pepe to use money, which reportedly we have potentially a plus budget this summer. So use the money wisely and get us adequate pieces to continue this trend. He has come out and said that he wants to win the Champions League. So when you hear that, I think we are going to make some decently good signings and spend some money because he has come out. It's not a report. He has come out and said it. So again, trust Pepe. That's going to do it for me for this episode. Let me know your thoughts down below. Thank you, Denzel, for everything you've done for Inter. True gentleman. As always, Forza Inter.